Question 1. What was the primary purpose of the Statute of Dublin in 1284? A. To annex Wales to the Crown of England. B. To establish parliamentary rules. C. To regulate the wool trade. D. To introduce a new tax system. Answer. A. To annex Wales to the Crown of England. The Statute of Dublin in 1284 was primarily aimed at annexing Wales under the administration of the English Crown, establishing English law and governments in the region. Question 2. Who was the first Plantagenet King of England? A. Richard I. B. Henry II. C. Edward I. D. John. Answer. B. Henry II. Henry II was the first Plantagenet King of England, ascending to the throne in 1154 and known for his significant legal reforms that laid the foundation for the English common law system. Question 3. What role did the Magna Carta play in limiting the powers of the king? A. It ended the monarchy. B. It established the king's absolute power. C. It set the foundation for a constitutional monarchy. D. It abolished feudalism. Answer. C. It set the foundation for a constitutional monarchy. The Magna Carta, signed in 1215, played a crucial role in limiting the powers of the king, setting the stage for the development of a constitutional monarchy in England. Question 4. Describe the significance of the Battle of Bosworth in 1485. A. It marked the beginning of the Tudor dynasty. B. It was the last battle of the English Civil War. C. It resulted in English independence from France. D. It led to the abolition of the monarchy. Answer. A. It marked the beginning of the Tudor dynasty. The Battle of Bosworth in 1485 is significant as it marked the end of the Wars of the Roses and the beginning of the Tudor dynasty with Henry VI's ascension to the throne. Question 5. Who was the UK Prime Minister during the Suez Crisis in 1956? A. Winston Churchill. B. Anthony Eden. C. Harold Macmillan. D. Clement Attlee. Answer. B. Anthony Eden. Anthony Eden was the UK Prime Minister during the Suez Crisis in 1956, a major international incident that highlighted the decline of Britain's global influence post-World War II. Question 6. What was the main outcome of the Acts of Union 1707? A. The dissolution of the Scottish Parliament. B. The creation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. C. The introduction of the euro currency. D. The separation of Ireland from the UK. Answer. B. The creation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. The Acts of Union 1707 united the kingdoms of England and Scotland under the name of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, merging their parliaments and legal systems. Question 7. In which year did the Great Fire of London occur, and what were its repercussions? A. 1666, led to the rebuilding of much of the city. B. 1642, initiated the English Civil War. C. 1700, resulted in the Industrial Revolution. D. 1605, caused the Gunpowder Plot. Answer. A. 1666, led to the rebuilding of much of the city. The Great Fire of London in 1666 devastated a large part of the city, leading to significant urban redevelopment and new building regulations. Question 8. Who was responsible for the establishment of the Church of England? A. Elizabeth I. B. Henry VIII. C. James I. D. Charles I. Answer. B. Henry VIII. Henry VIII was responsible for the establishment of the Church of England in 1534, following his break with the Roman Catholic Church over issues of annulment. Question 9. What was the historical impact of the Glorious Revolution of 1688? A. It confirmed the divine right of kings. B. It established a democratic government. C. It led to the establishment of a constitutional monarchy. D. It triggered the American Revolution. Answer: C. It led to the establishment of a constitutional monarchy. The Glorious Revolution of 1688 was significant for establishing a constitutional monarchy in England, affirming the supremacy of Parliament over the monarchy. Question 10. Explain the significance of the Domesday Book, compiled in 1086. A. It was a religious text. B. It documented the results of a nationwide survey of England. C. It outlined the laws of the new monarchy. D. It was a peace treaty. Answer: B. It documented the results of a nationwide survey of England. The Domesday Book, compiled in 1086, was significant as it recorded a comprehensive survey of England's lands and resources, establishing the basis for taxation. Question 11. How did the Reform Act of 1832 change the British electoral system? A. It abolished the monarchy. B. It extended voting rights to women. C. It broadened the electoral franchise and reformed electoral districts. D. It eliminated the House of Lords. Answer: C. It broadened the electoral franchise and reformed electoral districts. The Reform Act of 1832 was significant in changing the British electoral system by broadening the electoral franchise to more segments of society and addressing the issue of rotten boroughs. Question 12. Who were the suffragettes and what did they achieve by 1918? A. Female activists who secured voting rights for women. B. Politicians who fought for the abolition of slavery. C. Writers who promoted education reforms. D. Artists who led cultural revolutions. Answer: A. Female activists who secured voting rights for women. The suffragettes were female activists who campaigned vigorously for women's suffrage, achieving significant success when women over the age of 30 were granted the right to vote in 1918. Question 13. What led to the formation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland in 1922? A. The unification of Scotland and England. B. The separation of Ireland following the Irish War of Independence. C. The merger with Wales. D. The acquisition of colonial territories. Answer: B. The separation of Ireland following the Irish War of Independence. The formation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland in 1922 occurred after the separation of much of Ireland following the Irish War of Independence, leading to the establishment of the Irish Free State. Question 14. Which document formalized the abdication of King Edward VIII in 1936? A. The Royal Marriages Act. B. The Statute of Westminster. C. The Instrument of Abdication. D. The Magna Carta. Answer: C. The Instrument of Abdication. The Instrument of Abdication, signed in 1936, formalized the abdication of King Edward VIII, allowing him to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee, which was against the advice of his government. Question 15. What was the Beveridge Report, and how did it influence British society? A. A financial plan that led to economic recovery post-World War II. B. A medical report that improved health standards. C. A report that proposed comprehensive social insurance and welfare benefits. D. A military strategy document from World War II. Answer. C. A report that proposed comprehensive social insurance and welfare benefits. The Beveridge Report, published in 1942, was significant for proposing sweeping social reforms, including the creation of the National Health Service and a comprehensive system of social insurance, influencing the development of the modern welfare state. Question 16. During which war was the Battle of Britain fought, and what was its significance? A. World War I. It marked the beginning of aerial warfare. B. World War II. It was a crucial aerial battle that prevented a German invasion. C. The Falklands War. It was the first electronic warfare engagement. D. The Boer War. It marked the use of guerrilla tactics. Answer. B. World War II. It was a crucial aerial battle that prevented a German invasion. The Battle of Britain, fought in 1940 during World War II, was significant as it marked the first major military campaign fought entirely by air forces, and its success prevented Germany from gaining air superiority over Britain. Question 17. What was the impact of the Black Death on medieval England's society and economy? A. It led to a significant increase in population. B. It caused major social upheaval and labour shortages. C. It improved healthcare systems. D. It had no significant impact. Answer. B. It caused major social upheaval and labour shortages. The Black Death, which struck England in the mid-14th century, had a profound impact on society and the economy, causing widespread mortality and significant labour shortages, which led to social and economic reforms. Question 18. Who was the British monarch during the American War of Independence? A. Queen Victoria. B. King George III. C. King Henry VIII. D. Queen Elizabeth I. Answer. B. King George III. King George III was the British monarch during the American War of Independence, a conflict that resulted in the loss of the American colonies for Britain. Question 19. Explain the purpose and outcome of the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713. A. To end the Spanish War of Succession and redistribute Spanish territories. B. To begin the Industrial Revolution in Europe. C. To establish the United Nations. D. To merge England and Scotland. Answer. A. To end the Spanish War of Succession and redistribute Spanish territories. The Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 was significant for ending the War of the Spanish Succession, redistributing Spanish territories among the major European powers, and marking the rise of the British Empire as a dominant world power. Question 20. What is the royal prerogative and how has it evolved over time? A. The monarch's right to rule without parliamentary consent. B. Powers traditionally held by the monarch, but now exercised by ministers. C. The legal system within the royal family. D. The Parliament's ability to govern without the monarch. Answer. B. Powers traditionally held by the monarch, but now exercised by ministers. The royal prerogative refers to powers that were traditionally held by the monarch, but have evolved over time to be mostly exercised by government ministers, including decisions on foreign policy and defence. Question 21. Who was the longest-serving British Prime Minister of the 20th century? A. Winston Churchill. B. Margaret Thatcher. C. Harold Wilson. D. Tony Blair. Answer. B. Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher was the longest-serving British Prime Minister of the 20th century, holding office from 1979 to 1990. Question 22. What triggered the English Civil War in the 17th century? A. Economic disputes between the monarchy and Parliament. B. Religious disagreements and power struggles between the monarchy and Parliament. C. A foreign invasion by France. D. A public uprising against high taxes. Answer: B. Religious disagreements and power struggles between the monarchy and Parliament. The English Civil War was triggered by deep-seated religious disagreements and power struggles between King Charles I and Parliament. Question 23. Describe the historical context and consequences of the Highland clearances. A. The forced eviction of tenant farmers in the Scottish Highlands to make way for sheep farming. B. A series of laws that provided more land to the Scottish nobility. C. An agricultural innovation that improved farming techniques in Scotland. D. The migration of Highlanders to urban areas for better employment. Answer: A. The forced eviction of tenant farmers in the Scottish Highlands to make way for sheep farming. The Highland clearances, occurring mostly in the 18th and 19th centuries, involved the forced eviction of tenant farmers, drastically altering the Scottish Highlands socially and culturally. Question 24. What were the Corn Laws, and what led to their repeal in 1846? A. Laws that regulated the import and export of grain to protect domestic producers, repealed due to public demand for cheap bread. B. Laws that enforced strict agricultural practices, repealed due to inefficiency. C. Regulations on corn production, repealed as they were considered outdated. D. Laws that provided subsidies to corn farmers, repealed due to budget constraints. Answer: A. Laws that regulated the import and export of grain to protect domestic producers, repealed due to public demand for cheap bread. The Corn Laws were designed to protect domestic grain producers by imposing tariffs on imported grain, and they were repealed following widespread public demand for more affordable food during economic hardships. Question 25. Who was the first female Member of Parliament to take a seat, and in what year? A. Nancy Astor, 1919. B. Margaret Thatcher, 1959. C. Theresa May, 1997. D. Constance Markievicz, 1918. Answer: A. Nancy Astor, 1919. Nancy Astor was the first female Member of Parliament to take a seat in the House of Commons in 1919. Question 26. What major social reforms were enacted during the Victorian era? A. Introduction of the public health system. B. Reforms in education, public health and labour laws. C. Deregulation of the financial markets. D. Expansion of the military. Answer: B. Reforms in education, public health and labour laws. The Victorian era saw significant social reforms, including the introduction of compulsory education, improvements in public health, and labour laws that improved working conditions. Question 27. How did the Industrial Revolution transform the UK's economy and society? A. It led to a decrease in urban populations. B. It brought about agricultural advancements. C. It resulted in rapid urbanisation and industrialisation. D. It slowed down economic growth due to reliance on old industries. Answer: C. It resulted in rapid urbanisation and industrialisation. The Industrial Revolution fundamentally transformed the UK's economy and society by shifting from agrarian economies to industrial powerhouses, leading to rapid urbanisation and changes in social structures. Question 28. What was the significance of the swinging 60s for British cultural evolution? A. Marked by economic downturns. B. Known for technological innovations. C. Characterized by cultural liberation, music, and fashion. D. Focused on political reforms. Answer: C. Characterized by cultural liberation, music, and fashion. The swinging 60s were significant for British cultural evolution, highlighting a period of cultural liberation that was influential globally in music, fashion, and liberal attitudes. Question 29. Who authored The Origin of Species, and how did it impact scientific thought? A. Isaac Newton. B. Charles Darwin. C. Albert Einstein. D. Stephen Hawking. Answer: B. Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin authored The Origin of Species, which profoundly impacted scientific thought by introducing the theory of natural selection and laying the groundwork for evolutionary biology. Question 30. What was the outcome of the Jacobite Rising of 1745? A. The restoration of the Catholic monarchy. B. The consolidation of the Hanoverian monarchy. C. Scottish independence was achieved. D. It led to the establishment of parliamentary democracy. Answer: B. The consolidation of the Hanoverian monarchy. The Jacobite Rising of 1745 aimed to restore the Stuart monarchy, but ultimately resulted in the consolidation of the Hanoverian monarchy in Britain. Question 31. What role did the UK play in the formation of the United Nations? A. It was among the primary founders and drafters of the UN Charter. B. It joined the UN only after its initial formation. C. It opposed the formation of the UN. D. It played a minor role with little influence. Answer: A. It was among the primary founders and drafters of the UN Charter. The UK played a crucial role in the formation of the United Nations, being one of the primary founders and actively involved in drafting the UN Charter. Question 32. Which British law effectively abolished capital punishment, and in what year? A. The Murder, Abolition of Death Penalty, Act 1965. B. The Capital Punishment Act 1970. C. The Justice Reform Act 1985. D. The Criminal Law Act 1991. Answer: A. The Murder, Abolition of Death Penalty, Act 1965. This act suspended and effectively abolished capital punishment for murder in the UK, marking a significant change in British legal practice. Question 33. How did the Witchcraft Acts from the early modern period affect UK law? A. They legalised the practice of witchcraft. B. They criminalised witchcraft, leading to trials and executions. C. They were largely ignored by the legal system. D. They promoted religious freedom. Answer: B. They criminalised witchcraft, leading to trials and executions. The Witchcraft Acts enacted in the early modern period were significant in UK law, as they criminalised the practice of witchcraft, resulting in numerous trials and executions until their repeal in the 18th century. Question 34. What were the main causes and outcomes of the British enclosure movement? A. It caused a decline in agricultural productivity. B. It led to the consolidation of land and increased agricultural efficiency. C. It resulted in widespread reforestation. D. It decreased the rural population. Answer: B. It led to the consolidation of land and increased agricultural efficiency. The British enclosure movement involved the division and consolidation of common lands into individual plots, which significantly increased agricultural efficiency, but also led to social displacement. Question 35. Who was the first British astronaut to visit space, and under what program? A. Tim Peake, International Space Station Program. B. Helen Sharman, Project Juno. C. Michael Foale, Apollo Program. D. Richard Branson, Virgin Galactic. Answer: B. Helen Sharman, Project Juno. Helen Sharman became the first British astronaut to visit space in 1991 as part of Project Juno, a cooperative project between a number of British companies and the Soviet space program. Question 36. Describe the changes brought about by the Good Friday Agreement of 1998. A. It led to the independence of Ireland. B. It resolved the Scottish independence dispute. C. It largely ended the conflict known as the Troubles in Northern Ireland. D. It merged Northern Ireland with the Republic of Ireland. Answer: C. It largely ended the conflict known as the Troubles in Northern Ireland. The Good Friday Agreement in 1998 was a major political development that largely ended the sectarian conflict in Northern Ireland and established a framework for political devolution and cooperative governance. Question 37. What major event in 1952 changed the line of succession to the British throne? A. The abdication of King Edward VIII. B. The death of King George VI and the accession of Queen Elizabeth II. C. The marriage of Prince Charles. D. The birth of Prince William. Answer: B. The death of King George VI and the accession of Queen Elizabeth II. The death of King George VI in 1952 led to the accession of his daughter, Queen Elizabeth II, significantly changing the line of succession to the British throne. Question 38. How did the Battle of Agincourt in 1415 affect Anglo-French relations? A. It ended the 100 Years' War. B. It worsened the long-standing rivalry, marking a significant English victory. C. It improved diplomatic relations. D. It had no significant impact. Answer: B. It worsened the long-standing rivalry, marking a significant English victory. The Battle of Agincourt in 1415 was a major English victory in the 100 Years' War that worsened Anglo-French relations and showcased the effectiveness of English longbowmen. Question 39. Who were the key figures in the British abolitionist movement against slavery? A. Winston Churchill and Neville Chamberlain. B. William Wilberforce and Thomas Clarkson. C. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. D. Margaret Thatcher and John Major. Answer: B. William Wilberforce and Thomas Clarkson. William Wilberforce and Thomas Clarkson were key figures in the British abolitionist movement, leading campaigns against the slave trade and slavery in the British Empire. Question 40. What triggered the Gunpowder Plot of 1605, and what was its intended goal? A. To restore Catholic rule by assassinating King James I and blowing up the Parliament. B. To protest against the taxation system. C. To start a military coup. D. To gain independence for Scotland. Answer: A. To restore Catholic rule by assassinating King James I and blowing up the Parliament. The Gunpowder Plot of 1605 was triggered by religious conflict, with its primary goal being to assassinate King James I and restore Catholic rule by destroying the Houses of Parliament during the state opening. Question 41. How did the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805 shape European naval power dynamics? A. It confirmed British naval supremacy and weakened French and Spanish navies. B. It led to the dominance of the Spanish Navy. C. It resulted in the unification of European naval forces. D. It had little impact on naval power dynamics in Europe. Answer: A. It confirmed British naval supremacy and weakened French and Spanish navies. The Battle of Trafalgar in 1805 was a pivotal naval conflict that confirmed British naval supremacy and significantly weakened the French and Spanish navies, influencing European naval power dynamics for years to come. Question 42. What legislative changes were brought by the Married Women's Property Act of 1882? A. It allowed married women to inherit property independently of their husbands. B. It restricted the rights of married women. C. It abolished marriage in the UK. D. It required married women to transfer their property to their husbands. Answer: A. It allowed married women to inherit property independently of their husbands. The Married Women's Property Act of 1882 was a significant reform in UK law, allowing married women to own, buy and sell property in their own right, independently of their husbands. Question 43. Which British monarch officially inaugurated the Commonwealth of Nations? A. Queen Elizabeth II. B. King George VI. C. Queen Victoria. D. King Edward VII. Answer: B. King George VI. King George VI officially inaugurated the Commonwealth of Nations in 1949, transitioning from the British Empire to a voluntary association of independent nations. Question 44. What was the impact of the Winter of Discontent on British politics in the late 1970s? A. It led to significant economic growth. B. It resulted in the collapse of the Labour government and the rise of Margaret Thatcher. C. It strengthened trade union power. D. It had no significant political impact. Answer: B. It resulted in the collapse of the Labour government and the rise of Margaret Thatcher. The Winter of Discontent, characterised by widespread strikes and civil unrest over pay and conditions, led to public dissatisfaction with the Labour government, paving the way for Margaret Thatcher's election in 1979. Question 45. Describe the significance of the Falklands War for UK-Argentina relations. A. It led to a lasting peace agreement. B. It resulted in heightened tensions and a brief conflict over the Falkland Islands. C. It improved trade relations. D. It had no impact on their relations. Answer: B. It resulted in heightened tensions and a brief conflict over the Falkland Islands. The Falklands War in 1982 between the UK and Argentina over the sovereignty of the Falkland Islands resulted in heightened tensions and a military conflict, impacting their bilateral relations significantly. Question 46. What reforms did the Labour government implement after World War II? A. They dismantled the welfare state. B. They introduced significant social and economic reforms, including the creation of the NHS. C. They privatized major industries. D. They cut public spending drastically. Answer: B. They introduced significant social and economic reforms, including the creation of the NHS. After World War II, the Labour government implemented wide-ranging reforms, most notably the creation of the National Health Service, NHS, which provided healthcare free at the point of use. Question 47. Who was the Iron Lady, and what were her key policies? A. Elizabeth I, maritime exploration. B. Theresa May, Brexit negotiations. C. Margaret Thatcher, economic liberalisation and a tough stance against the Soviet Union. D. Queen Victoria, expansion of the British Empire. Answer: C. Margaret Thatcher, economic liberalisation and a tough stance against the Soviet Union. Margaret Thatcher known as the Iron Lady, was noted for her policies of economic liberalization, including privatization and deregulation, as well as her firm stance in foreign policy, particularly against the Soviet Union. Question 48. What was the purpose of the Elizabethan Poor Law of 1601? A. To provide pensions for the elderly. B. To establish hospitals across England. C. To provide support for the poor, which included workhouses. D. To outlaw begging and homelessness. Answer: C. To provide support for the poor, which included workhouses. The Elizabethan Poor Law of 1601 was designed to provide care for the poor and destitute, which included the establishment of workhouses as a means of offering food and shelter in exchange for work. Question 49. How did the Great Exhibition of 1851 influence global trade and culture? A. It led to a decrease in global trade. B. It showcased British and global innovations and promoted international trade and cultural exchange. C. It focused only on British cultural artifacts. D. It resulted in cultural isolation for the UK. Answer: B. It showcased British and global innovations and promoted international trade and cultural exchange. The Great Exhibition of 1851, held in the Crystal Palace in London, displayed thousands of inventions and works of art from around the world, influencing global trade and cultural exchange significantly. Question 50. Who were the Levellers, and what were their main political goals during the English Civil War? A. A royalist group supporting the king. B. A military faction focusing on naval supremacy. C. Advocates for social equality and expanded suffrage. D. Foreign mercenaries hired during the war. Answer: C. Advocates for social equality and expanded suffrage. The Levellers were a political movement during the English Civil War, advocating for social equality, religious tolerance, and expanded suffrage. Question 51. What was the significance of the Peterloo Massacre of 1819? A. It was a celebration of Peter the Great's visit to England. B. It was a peaceful protest that ended without incident. C. It resulted in a violent crackdown on protesters demanding parliamentary reform. D. It marked the end of the Napoleonic Wars. Answer: C. It resulted in a violent crackdown on protesters demanding parliamentary reform. The Peterloo Massacre occurred during a peaceful rally in St. Peter's Field, Manchester, where cavalry charged into the crowd, resulting in numerous casualties and marking a significant event in the fight for democratic reforms in Britain. Question 52. Which treaty ended the Napoleonic Wars, and what were its main terms? A. The Treaty of Paris, 1815. It restored European borders and balance of power. B. The Treaty of Versailles. It imposed heavy reparations on France. C. The Treaty of Amsterdam. It expanded the British Empire. D. The Treaty of London. It established a new monarchy in France. Answer: A. The Treaty of Paris, 1815. It restored European borders and balance of power. The Treaty of Paris in 1815 marked the end of the Napoleonic Wars, restoring the monarchy in France, affirming the balance of power in Europe, and redrawing national borders to prevent future French aggression. Question 53. How did the rotten borough system affect British electoral politics before 1832? A. It provided equal representation for all citizens. B. It allowed for fair and free elections. C. It resulted in disproportionate representation, with some MPs representing very few voters. D. It expanded voting rights to all men. Answer: C. It resulted in disproportionate representation, with some MPs representing very few voters. The rotten boroughs were parliamentary constituencies that had very small electorates, yet retained disproportionate representation in Parliament, leading to calls for electoral reform that culminated in the Reform Act of 1832. Question 54. What was the primary focus of the Chartist movement in the 19th century? A. To support the monarchy. B. To abolish the parliamentary system. C. To gain political rights and suffrage for the working class. D. To promote agricultural reforms. Answer. C. To gain political rights and suffrage for the working class. The Chartist movement was a significant working class movement in the 19th century, focusing on securing political rights and suffrage for the working class through petitions and peaceful protests. Question 55. Describe the role and significance of the Secret Intelligence Service during World War II. A. It was primarily involved in domestic policing. B. It played a crucial role in gathering intelligence and conducting espionage operations against the Axis powers. C. It served as a diplomatic corps. D. It focused on economic policies. Answer. B. It played a crucial role in gathering intelligence and conducting espionage operations against the Axis powers. The Secret Intelligence Service, also known as MI6, was instrumental during World War II in conducting espionage and intelligence gathering that supported the Allied war effort. Question 56. What were the main impacts of the Big Bang financial reforms of 1986? A. They restricted financial trading and investment. B. They led to significant deregulation of financial markets and modernization of the London Stock Exchange. C. They caused the immediate collapse of the financial sector. D. They ended the use of electronic trading. Answer. B. They led to significant deregulation of financial markets and modernization of the London Stock Exchange. The Big Bang financial reforms in 1986 were crucial in deregulating the financial markets, introducing electronic trading, and consolidating London's position as a global financial centre. Question 57. What initiated the British agricultural revolution in the 18th century? A. The decline in agricultural practices. B. Innovations such as crop rotation and the use of more effective tools. C. An increase in urban populations demanding less food. D. The abandonment of rural areas. Answer. B. Innovations such as crop rotation and the use of more effective tools. The British agricultural revolution was marked by significant innovations, including improved crop rotation methods and the adoption of more effective agricultural tools, which greatly increased productivity and efficiency. Question 58. How did the Battle of the Somme in 1916 affect World War I? A. It had no significant impact on the war. B. It led to a quick Allied victory. C. It was one of the bloodiest battles of the war, with significant casualties, symbolizing the brutality of trench warfare. D. It resulted in the immediate end of the war. Answer. C. It was one of the bloodiest battles of the war, with significant casualties, symbolizing the brutality of trench warfare. The Battle of the Somme in 1916 is remembered for its extreme loss of life and limited territorial gain, highlighting the harsh realities of trench warfare during World War I. Question 59. Who was the Prime Minister during the introduction of the NHS in 1948? A. Winston Churchill. B. Clement Attlee. C. Margaret Thatcher. D. Tony Blair. Answer. B. Clement Attlee. Clement Attlee was the Prime Minister when the National Health Service, NHS was introduced in 1948, establishing a landmark in British social welfare by providing healthcare free at the point of use. Question 60. What significant changes did the Human Rights Act of 1998 introduce? A. It curtailed basic freedoms to increase security. B. It incorporated the European Convention on Human Rights into UK law. C. It abolished all previous UK human rights laws. D. It focused only on economic rights. Answer. B. It incorporated the European Convention on Human Rights into UK law. The Human Rights Act of 1998 was significant for incorporating the European Convention on Human Rights into domestic British law, ensuring that individuals could bring human rights cases in domestic courts. Question 61. Describe the impact of the three-day week in 1974 on the UK economy. A. It significantly boosted economic growth. B. It was a period of increased industrial productivity. C. It led to severe economic constraints due to energy shortages. D. It had no noticeable impact on the economy. Answer. C. It led to severe economic constraints due to energy shortages. The three-day week was implemented in response to energy shortages, mainly due to industrial action and coal shortages, leading to restricted commercial electricity use and significantly impacting the UK economy. Question 62. How did the Treaty of Versailles in 1919 affect British foreign policy? A. It isolated the UK from mainland Europe. B. It strengthened the UK's alliances with its colonial territories. C. It led to a more isolationist approach in British foreign policy. D. It was instrumental in establishing the League of Nations, shaping British diplomatic engagement. Answer. D. It was instrumental in establishing the League of Nations, shaping British diplomatic engagement. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919, which officially ended World War I, included provisions that led to the creation of the League of Nations, influencing British foreign policy towards more international cooperation and engagement. Question 63. What was the primary reason for the UK's economic decline in the 1970s? A. Excessive government spending on military. B. Nationalisation of major industries. C. Industrial unrest and oil crisis. D. Overspending on public services. Answer. C. Industrial unrest and oil crisis. The economic decline in the UK during the 1970s was largely due to industrial unrest, characterised by widespread strikes and labour disputes, coupled with global oil crisis that caused economic instability. Question 64. Who led the UK during the transition from Empire to Commonwealth? A. Queen Elizabeth II. B. Winston Churchill. C. Clement Attlee. D. Harold Macmillan. Answer. C. Clement Attlee. Prime Minister Clement Attlee was in office during the crucial period when the British Empire began transitioning into the Commonwealth, overseeing significant decolonisation efforts post-World War II. Question 65. What were the consequences of the South Sea Bubble in 1720? A. It led to major expansions in overseas trade. B. It resulted in long-term economic growth. C. It caused financial ruin for many and a stock market crash. D. It had little impact on the British economy. Answer. C. It caused financial ruin for many and a stock market crash. The South Sea Bubble was a financial scandal in 1720 involving the speculative rise and dramatic fall of the South Sea Company's shares, leading to widespread financial ruin and a significant crisis in the British stock market. Question 66. What led to the decriminalisation of homosexuality in the UK in 1967? A. The Sexual Offences Act 1967. B. The Human Rights Act 1998. C. The Equal Rights Amendment. D. The Marriage Act. Answer: A. The Sexual Offences Act 1967. The decriminalisation of homosexuality in England and Wales was achieved through the Sexual Offences Act 1967, which decriminalised homosexual acts in private between two men, both of whom had to be at least 21 years old. Question 67. Describe the significance of the Battle of Cable Street in 1936. A. It was a major military battle during World War II. B. It was a confrontation between anti-fascist protesters and the British Union of Fascists. C. It marked the end of the British Empire. D. It was a celebration of British naval history. Answer: B. It was a confrontation between anti-fascist protesters and the British Union of Fascists. The Battle of Cable Street in 1936 in London's East End was significant as a large-scale protest by local communities and political activists against the march of Oswald Mosley's British Union of Fascists, symbolising popular resistance to fascism. Question 68. Who was the first woman to serve as Speaker of the House of Commons? A. Nancy Astor. B. Margaret Bonfield. C. Betty Boothroyd. D. Theresa May. Answer: C. Betty Boothroyd. Betty Boothroyd served as the first female Speaker of the House of Commons, elected to the position in 1992, and was known for her formidable presence and reformative approach to the role. Question 69. What were the main reasons for the UK opting out of the euro currency? A. Economic stability and control over monetary policy. B. Political disagreements with the EU. C. The strength of the pound sterling. D. All of the above. Answer: D. All of the above. The UK opted out of adopting the euro as its currency due to a combination of reasons, including maintaining economic stability, retaining control over its monetary policy, and the strength of the pound sterling, coupled with political considerations and public opinion. Question 70. Describe the impact of the Balfour Declaration of 1917. A. It declared support for a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. B. It supported independence for India. C. It outlined post-World War II peace terms. D. It was a trade agreement with the United States. Answer: A. It declared support for a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. The Balfour Declaration, issued by British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour in 1917, was significant as it expressed British support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, influencing the region's future developments. Question 71. What led to the UK returning Hong Kong to China in 1997? A. Economic pressures. B. The expiration of the 99-year lease agreed in the Treaty of Nanking. C. Military defeat. D. A referendum in Hong Kong. Answer: B. The expiration of the 99-year lease agreed in the Treaty of Nanking. The return of Hong Kong to China in 1997 was due to the expiration of the 99-year lease on the new territories, which was part of agreements signed in the Treaty of Nanking in 1898. Question 72. How did the miners' strike of 1984/85 affect the UK's labour landscape? A. It led to stronger union rights. B. It resulted in the defeat of the miners' unions and significant changes in British industrial relations. C. It had no lasting impact. D. It improved conditions in the mining industry. Answer B. It resulted in the defeat of the miners' unions and significant changes in British industrial relations. The miners' strike of 1984-85 was a major industrial action by coal miners against the closure of collieries, which ended in defeat for the unions and led to significant changes in the way unions were treated and industrial relations were managed in the UK. Question 73. What was the main goal of the social contract policy in the 1970s? A. To reduce public expenditure. B. To manage economic inflation through agreements between the government and trade unions. C. To increase taxes. D. To privatize state-owned enterprises. Answer B. To manage economic inflation through agreements between the government and trade unions. The social contract was a policy implemented by the Labour government in the 1970s, involving agreements with trade unions to control wage demands in return for action on prices and taxes to manage inflation. Question 74. Describe the changes brought by the Education Act of 1944. A. It reduced public funding for education. B. It introduced comprehensive education for all children. C. It established the modern state education system, providing free education for all children. D. It focused exclusively on higher education. Answer C. It established the modern state education system, providing free education for all children. The Education Act of 1944, also known as the Butler Act, was instrumental in establishing the modern state education system in the UK, which provided free primary and secondary education for all children. Question 75. What were the causes and impacts of the credit crunch in 2008 on the UK? A. It led to increased investment in the banking sector. B. It was caused by a global surplus of savings and resulted in minor economic adjustments. C. It stemmed from a liquidity shortfall in the banking system and led to a severe economic recession. D. It improved the housing market conditions. Answer C. It stemmed from a liquidity shortfall in the banking system and led to a severe economic recession. The credit crunch in 2008 was caused by a critical liquidity shortfall in the banking system due to poorly secured loans and high-risk financial products, leading to a severe global economic recession that heavily impacted the UK economy.